Hello, heathens! I'm Megan Angus, and this is Spinning the Wheel podcast. In this weekly audio ritual, we explore the 8 seasons of the witch's wheel of the year, and we discover how it is so much more than 8 Sabbats. We weirding witches time travel through holy days, festivals, and celestial events connecting our celebrations and magic to the past, present, and future. Our cackling fills the night as we take our turn gathering the wool, wielding the distaff, and spinning the wheel. Welcome back, witches, for yet another installment of Spinning the Wheel. With me, your labyrinthine host, Megan Angus. I contain multitudes, people. We are legion. All right, look. Needed to take just like a moment off because, I don't know about you all, but that eclipse season was hitting and still is. And good Lord. Yeah, but here we are. We're back. We're slowly crawling out of the grave and, preparing for the dark half of the year, right? Happy Samhain. Happy Dias de la Muerte. Happy Niknevin. Happy all of it. Welcome to the dead half of the year. Welcome to the dark half of the year. We made it. And we're still alive, right? We're still kicking. So before we get into all of this stuff, let's get into the stuff. Where are we? We are officially in Samhain season. Before we get into the actual meat of this workshop, the meat of this podcast, I have so many things going on. I don't even know what I'm doing. Let me say thanks to everybody who showed up for the Samhain live stream on YouTube. It was really fun to be back live streaming on YouTube. Really appreciate it. Really enjoy it. If you haven't checked out the Samhain live stream, go check it out. You can watch it on my website. You can watch it on my YouTube channel. If you subscribe to my YouTube channel, you will get alerts when new classes or other videos are posted. Thanks again to everybody who joined me. That was super fun. And for everybody who is subscribed to my Patreon, you will get access to the multi-week calendar, the workbook that I refer to multiple times in the class. You get access to digital spells. You get access to my seasonal playlists that I make every year, and so much more. As a thank you to my patrons for supporting me in doing this work and making it possible for me to offer these classes for free on the internet. Dope, killer, excellent, sick, ridiculous, badass. Those are just a few of the words that I use to describe my patrons who make it possible for me to do this work and to do it for free. You guys are the best. Oh my God. Okay. If you are turned on by this work, if you think it is delightful, wonderful, and incredible, please subscribe to my Patreon. You can subscribe for as little as $1, which is basically like throwing a tip in the tip jar, which I highly recommend. And highly appreciate. But of course, at the higher levels, you get cool stuff. $9 and up, you get access to the Patreon bag of holding that has the workbook, playlist, digital spells, all of that good stuff. At the $23 level and up, which is the sun level and higher, you can schedule readings with me multiple times a year to integrate this work on a more personal level. And folks that subscribe at the $66 level and up, which is the Jupiter level and up, get to meet with me every month for a half hour or an hour or a 2-hour reading to really dive into your astro transits. We can do tarot readings. We can just bullshit about magic and your magical practice, however you would like to spend that time with me. But these are the folks that make it possible, and those are the benefits that they get for helping. So thanks to you guys for supporting me and making it possible for me to do this work in community. And also, thanks to everybody who who works with me, because I just love it. I really, really do. It's so cool to see how this stuff plays out in people's lives, because I am a mad scientist, and I do enjoy staring down on all of you humans as you suffer. Okay, so anyways, what else do we have going on this week or this month? A shitload, let me tell you. So tonight, November 10th, I am hosting a workshop on the night side of tarot. This is working with reversals in tarot. This is something that you've wanted to dive into and get, a real up close and intense look at. We are going to be looking at that tonight. November 15th is our next tarot workshop, and this is tarot helpers learning to utilize assistants like mantras, sound, color magic, essential oils, crystals, and a ton more. November 17th will be our next tarot circle. This is a free monthly benefit for all of my patrons where we talk about tarot. Talking about tarot. And this month, I don't know what I'm doing. So there is a poll up currently on Patreon for you all to pick what it is that we're going to talk about this month. And then November 22nd is my last tarot workshop of this year. How to talk so tarot will listen, and how to listen when tarot talks. This is about asking better questions and getting better answers and learning to synthesize the information that comes from your tarot readings. We will have 2 more classes in December. We'll have our Yule class, and we will have our last tarot circle of the year. And then that's it. That is it. And that's all. And that's it. And that's all. So join us for that stuff. If you're a patron, you get discount codes which apply to all of these workshops. And yes, you can go join Patreon and immediately use the discount if you'd like to sign up for one of these workshops, because that's how cool I am. All right. That's enough of that, probably. Oh, let me also say this, and then we can actually get into the stuff. If supporting the podcast and supporting the classes financially, economically, is not economically fit for you, which is super realistic because, everything is too expensive these days. I totally understand. So some of the coolest stuff that you can do to support this podcast is to like it, to subscribe, to leave a rating, leave a review on the podcast service that you listen to this on. That is extremely helpful. The algorithms love that stuff. Like, comment, and subscribe on my YouTube channel. Follow me on my social medias, Megan Angus Witch, everywhere in the world. And share this stuff with your friends and family, your coworkers. It's the coolest. I really appreciate it. And it also makes me feel really cool and good when folks trust this work enough to share it with their loved ones and their special people in their lives. Okay, that is enough of that. So now let us get into what the hell it is that we are doing. We are officially in Samhain season. Samhain season is going to run approximately from October 25th or October 31st. Actually, it's not even October 25th. It's really October 22nd-ish, because that's when the sun moves into Scorpio. That's kind of when I think of Samhain season sort of officially starting. But the traditional date to celebrate Samhain is October 31st, November 1st. And this is going to run all the way through to December 20th or 21st, which is winter solstice. And that's when the next Sabbath kicks off. And our major themes for witches, pagans, and heathens during this time of year center on big old topics like life, death, and rebirth, fate, and working with our ancestors. Samhain is the 3rd harvest of the year. It's the nut harvest. It's also called the blood harvest. And we are officially wrapping up, or have wrapped up, all of the work, more or less, depending on where you are in the Northern Hemisphere. Pretty much all of the work that we're going to do out in the fields in terms of harvesting stuff in. Um, there is a tradition in uh, Western Europe, in the British Isles, around a creature called the Puka Fairy, who is a member of the Wild Hunt or the Furious Host. And everything is supposed to be pulled in before October 31st that is going to be eaten. Otherwise, it is touched by the Puka Fairy, and it has sort of like an element of the other world or the underworld or the world of shades on it. And if you eat it, you might be cursed, or you might be taken into the lands of the dead, or you might fall into a stupor for 6 months or 100 years or something along those lines. From a scientific standpoint, we can absolutely assume that after a certain point, foods growing out in nature are no longer going to be safe to eat because they probably have some kind of mold or mildew or fungus growing on them. They might have become home to an insect or something along those lines. So, just from a scientific and a biological standpoint, we absolutely can see how those energies in those foods might have been shifted a little bit. And, funguses and molds and mildews were not as understood exactly in the same way as they are now in our modern era. And so, a variety of adventures could be had, right? Desired adventures and not so desired adventures by eating something that had a little bit of something growing on it. And then all of a sudden, we're in the land of, I don't understand what's happening to me. I'm tripping balls. So, that stuff, right? And that metaphor kind of runs through our work at this time of year. There is work that we do in the outer world and work that we do in the inner world. And so there's an encouragement at this time of year to turn inward a little bit and to and not specifically let go of the physical world, but start to attend to the inner spiritual world a little bit more. If we think back to eras when electric light wasn't so much of a thing, or instant light wasn't so much of a thing, this very much would be, a time of like, there's no light and it's cold outside and nothing is growing. I'm not doing anything outside. I'm staying in my home. I'm eating the foods that I have harvested, and I'm taking care of myself. I'm stuffing cotton into the holes of my cottage to keep it warm, and I'm probably sleeping a lot because we're only getting a few hours of daylight anyways, all of that stuff. So when we look at the types of works that pagans and witches and heathens might be focused on during Samhain, it centers around things like death and transition, the underworld journey, communicating with ancestors and doing our shadow work, doing purification and protection spells and rituals, resting after this massive season of labor, but also a celebration of life, which we talked about significantly in the class this year. And then also things like sacrifice, making room for chaos, and shutting down the physical plane, shutting down our activities to an extent, all of that stuff. Now, that all said, if you're like me, you live for the dark half of the year. This is my favorite half of the year. Fall is probably my favorite season if I had to pick one. I love it when it's cold and dark. I sort of come alive at this time of year. So, as much as there is sort of a shutting down and a resting after labor and all of that stuff, I also am like, hooray, the sun has died. Let's go party. So, and that's how you know I'm really a witch, because I'm like, oh no, the solar deity has fallen. Tragic. let's light a giant bonfire and dance around it for for all night long. Um, but yes, our solar deities are dead or dying. Our vegetation deities are dead or dying. And again, we talk about that a lot in the class. If you are wanting even more detailed information on that stuff. So, with that, let me now get into exactly what we are doing with this week. I know I'm a little late with this podcast this week. I apologize. Again, I've had a few things going on. Um, but we started this week with just a little old thing called a blood lunar eclipse. It was a spooky eclipse. This has been a tough ass eclipse season. Our first eclipse was back in October with the new moon. Then we had this eclipse with the full moon in Taurus. Um, and I wasn't too worried about getting this podcast out on time around that eclipse because as I talked about in the last class and the previous podcast from a week or two ago, these eclipses just, they really were best treated with kid gloves, because the astrology of the eclipses were Funkadelic 5000. The alignments with the eclipse, the moon and sun themselves, as well as other stuff that was happening in the sky, is just gnarly. It's just not conducive to doing magic or making stuff happen in the world, from a magical standpoint or a witchcraft standpoint. It was just like kind of like meh, little asterisk next to that of, if you are a person who does left hand path work, if you are a person who does chaos magic, if you're a person who trucks in some of that heavier, darker stuff, this might have been an extremely potent time for you, but even then, maybe a bit difficult to handle. But if you are a person who's not super familiar with that kind of work, or you don't mess with it too much, this was absolutely a time to just kind of like take a bubble bath, watch some reruns, bake some cookies, and just like, I'll be back to it in a few days. Like y'all have fun out there. I'm going to go take care of some business on the mundane plane, and we'll be back to the spooky shit in a little while. But, no thank you. So now that we've had like a moment, or two pass from this full moon, I feel like we can talk about it and like the stuff that we can do with it. So this full moon in and of itself, aside from the ultra spooky eclipse part, this was a full moon in Taurus. And our full moon in Taurus really encourages us to, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die. And that may sound a little morbid, but it really is incredibly celebratory. And again, this particular full moon had a lot of heaviness with it, and a lot of dark energy, and a lot of spooky energy. And so on the moment of, maybe not so much, or maybe, right? Like, forget the gods for a second. I'll deal with the ancestors tomorrow. Like, I'm going to deal with all that spiritual stuff in a minute. Right now, I'm going to just be in my body. Maybe that was the best way for us to handle that full moon, or maybe that's the way we chose to handle it. But again, now that we are a couple of days out from that, we can kind of turn around and look at what's going on. And yes, in fact, we should be sort of drinking in the physical plane and really reveling in the fact that we are alive, in the face of the world dying in a variety of ways, symbolically and otherwise, and, literally to an extent. Um, this is a season where profound celebration and profound insistence of life is very potent. It's very important, and it's very potent work to do. And our full moon in Taurus invites us to enjoy the world, enjoy our bodies, and really revel in our senses, and revel in our five senses, revel in the taste and the smell and the touch and the sight of things and the sounds of things. So this is a great time for, safely, COVID, I know, but going to shows, going to art openings, um, enjoying the crafts makers and the makers of all types, really, in your community, making good food. We here in Seattle, we've had Seattle Restaurant Week, so it's been a really fantastic time to go out to restaurants and eat good food, because you're not only going to eat some great food, but you're supporting a great cause. Um, and right, this is a great time for that in whatever way you can afford that, and whatever makes sense for your life, whatever is safe for you to do there. It really is a great time for leaning in on, enjoying the physical plane and enjoying our physical bodies. We are still, No, we're not. No, I'm full of lies. That was for Taurus. Um, our moon then moved into. Am I going to do this right now? Yeah, I might as well. I'm going to do the lunar stuff, and then I know every week it's a little different, right? It's to keep you on your toes. um, we're going to talk about this. We'll talk about the fixed stars, and then we'll do our holy days. But that was our moon in Taurus. Wednesday the 9th, our moon moved into Gemini. And with the moon in Gemini, where it still is today, Thursday the 10th, we are in the waning side of the moon now. The moon is decreasing. We are headed towards the new moon, which means the moon is going to get smaller in the sky every night. And so this is a really great time for resting and relaxing and supporting or otherwise restoring our shoulders, our elbows, our wrists, our arms, our hands, and our armpits, our fingers, because these are all of the places of the body that are ruled by Gemini. So yes, going and getting the, oil treatment during your mani-pedi, absolutely a holy act right now. With our waning moon in Gemini, harvesting, doing pest control, disease control, plowing, weeding, and pruning below ground for or to support below ground growth on our plant friends. Very important and appropriate at this time. And again, coming back to that tradition of are we harvesting now or not? Right? There may still be things that are perfectly normal and safe, like this is the appropriate time to harvest. But just know that there is that little element of magical energy there of like anything that we're harvesting after October 31st carries a bit of fey magic or otherworldliness or night-sightedness about it, which I think is really cool. If we're prepared for that, right? If we do that on purpose, it's cool. um Harvesting seeds at this time, interesting metaphor, right? Interesting metaphor. But also coming to that idea of pest control and disease control on our plants as the weather really starts to turn. We want to be paying attention to our house plants, our plants that are outside. Are they getting a little fungus on them or a little mildew or mold or anything? Is there something that we need to do to prepare them for the deep fall and winter journey to make sure that they're doing okay? And then um, on Friday the 11th, the moon is going to head into Cancer. And then on Saturday, the 12th, we actually have our disseminating moon in Cancer at 5 degrees, 2:22 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day for everybody else around the planet. And with our disseminating moon in Cancer, there is an element of checking in on ourselves. There's a bit of stuff that we can do with this Cancer moon. One, we want to check in on ourselves and ask ourselves, do I have my defenses up? Am I unconsciously maybe a little freaked out and clenched because the changes that are happening around me just with the weather, let alone the atmosphere of politic and society and environmental collapse, all those little things that are going on in the background of daily life. So first off, we want to kind of check on that. Like, am I a little freaked out? Am I a little defensive? Am my hackles up a little bit right now? Do I need to soothe myself and calm down a little bit? But this is also a really fantastic moon for stepping in to protect the innocent. And if I am feeling that energy, is there a way that I can direct it out into the world to assist someone else? Um, can I lend my strength to someone else who maybe is feeling a little beat up or persecuted in the world and they need somebody to stand by them or even speak on their behalf, or be the shield, as it were, against the perils of bureaucracy, and they need a little assistance as they go through their own underworld journey. Is there a way that I can step into that role in some way in life, for a friend, for a neighbor, whatever? um, and and again, kind of coming and pushing that out into the world. That's what that can look like. That's what that can manifest as, is somebody walking through the world and having a hard time and they need somebody by their side to lend them some strength. This is a beautiful time to do that. And then also let me check in on myself and make sure that my defenses are healthy and appropriate and being appropriately exercised. I don't want to be clenched as I move through the world. I don't want to be hyper defensive as I move through the world. And am I okay there? And our astrology is going to have some stuff to say about this too as we roll back through that stuff. Um, Sunday the 13th, our moon is still in Cancer. Monday the 14th, the moon moves into, oh, I should say this about Cancer. Sorry. The other thing, so many things. When our moon is in Cancer, it is the most potent time of the lunar cycle to do magic and to do witchcraft. We will talk about exactly what kind of witchcraft we might be doing for this moon later in the podcast, but just know that when the moon is in Cancer, it's in its domicile. It's in the moon rules Cancer, so it's in its own house. It's in its own sign. It's like, I live here. This is my house. And it's very powerful, and it feels very like right and good. So anytime the moon is in Cancer, this is going to be an extra potent moment to have a little boost inside of our magical practices. But in particular, contraction magic of all types are supported. And again, we're going to talk about that more towards the end of the podcast. But anything that's around protecting, anything that's around reducing harm, or reducing problems or any of that is going to be supported at this time. For our lunar body with the moon in Cancer, we want to be resting, relaxing, supporting, nourishing the breasts, our chest, our belly, and our lungs. And for our plant body work, we want to be planting or transplanting or grafting for our bulbs, our biennial and perennial flowers, and any veggies that might bear crops below ground. So if you still have stuff out there that's growing, and it's below ground growth, which is probably the only kind of stuff. I mean, maybe there's a few gourds and squashes that are still doing their thing at this time of year, but mostly it's going to be below ground growth. And yes, we know we have winter crops as well, but this is a good time for zhuzhing up those plants a bit. A side note, as I always say, not a doctor of the human corpus. I am a doctor of witchery. So don't listen to me, some lady yelling on the internet about what to do with your physical body. Check in with your trusted health advisor if you're wanting to incorporate any of this information. And also, you can always work with the metaphor. So is there something you need to get off your chest, etc.? Right? Okay. Then we move into Monday the 14th, and our moon moves into Leo. And then Tuesday the 15th, the moon stays in Leo. And then Wednesday the 16th, we will have our waning half moon in Leo, which we will talk about next week's podcast. But while the moon is in Leo, we want to be nourishing and relaxing and resting our back, our heart, our circulation, and our blood. And this is another moon where we want to be doing harvesting, potentially, right? But really pest control, disease control, plowing, weeding, and pruning to encourage below ground growth. And so with plowing and weeding, it might be that this is the time for you to pull up plants that grew really well during the summer but are now starting to die off. Just get them out, throw them into the compost. Pruning to encourage below ground growth, what that's literally going to do is you're pruning plants back to encourage good root establishment and good root growth, which is going to be very important during late fall and winter and early spring growth cycles. Okay, that is our lunar stuff for the week. So now what we're going to talk about are our fixed stars and our holy days, and then we're going to come back to the astrology, just because I want to keep it really confusing this week, I guess. I'm inverted right now. What can I say? Everything's backwards. Everything's upside down for me. And so I'm just going with it. Okay. Yeah, let's do it. Alrighty, moving on to our fixed stars of the week and then our holy days for this week. The two fixed stars that I want to talk about are Zuban Shalamali and Onuk Alhe. And Zubin Eshamali was also known as Cheleborios from the Greek, which means the northern claw. And that's because the Greeks and a lot of other cultures did not think of the constellation Libra as its own thing. They saw it as a light, or an object that was in the grip of the scorpion's claws. And sometimes there isn't even an object, just the stars were literally the claws of the scorpion. We talk about this in class. So the this was Chele, or Chele Boreos, meaning the claws of the scorpion, Boreos meaning the north. So the northern claw, the upper claw. But the name Zubin Eshalmali comes from the Arabic. It also means the north scale, or scale north, but it also translates to the full price, or the price which covers. And I think that that's an interesting thing here. We have the southern scale of Libra, and we have the northern scale of Libra. And again, the Arabics were recognizing Libra as its own constellation within, the clutches of Scorpio, as it were. And so Zubanesh Hamali, scale north, the full price, or the price which covers. The southern scale was thought of as the inadequate price, basically, or the lacking price, or the place where that fails. And now think about um, the fact that we are just here at the very end of the massive harvest season for the year, and there absolutely would have been a thing in culture, right? It still is, around getting paid for your labor, right? Getting your due. And so there's something here in this star that speaks to that idea of, you have worked, you deserve to get paid. Slash, what is the appropriate payment for your labor and for your work? To me, that really kind of sits comfortably with that disseminating moon in Cancer, of, like, protecting the innocent and standing up for people who are maybe having a hard time standing up for themselves. Coming into, I don't know, what's a word that I'm thinking of when I think of Libra? Oh, right, union. Yeah, that's a word that, right? Partnership, unions. Right. So I'm sure it's just a coincidence, but there is kind of a thing about, people not getting paid what they're worth, and being in union with your coworkers, and yeah, stuff like that. So that kind of symbolism is here for us this week. Standing or sitting or being in union with the people around us, and assisting people who maybe are having a hard time with bureaucracy, or capitalism. Am I bending that into my own leftist agenda? Maybe a little bit, but I don't really think so. I think that's pretty straightforward, honestly. um, so that's one of our fixed stars that we want to talk about this week. And the other star that we're talking about, that fixed star, I should say, is rising. Zubanesh Hamali rises. November 11th. And our other fixed star that we're working with, Unuk Alhe, rises November 14th. And Unuk Alhe, also an Arabic name, and it refers to the neck of the snake. What snake? The snake that is held by none other than the constellation Ophiuchus, who causes so much trouble in astrology these days, because a lot of folks are like, that's the real Sagittarius. No, it isn't. Hush. It's just another constellation that happens to be hanging out here close by. But this is in reference to specifically the neck of the snake that is held by the person in that constellation. The neck, and this is directly from the website The Astrology King, which is where I get a lot of my information about fixed stars, but not all of it. Um, Quote, the neck, rather than the head, is where the snake has its brain, its seat of knowledge. So, this star is all about that knowledge that the good doctor has won from his labors. That knowledge of where we came from, what we are, where we are going, what holds us back, and what to do about healing it. Um, and this star has a bit of a funky reputation. A lot of astrologers that work with fixed stars will compare this star to an energy that is similar to Saturn or Mars, or even a combination of Saturn and Mars, who are the malefics of ancient astrology. Um, and yet, the Astrology King says this star does, in some measure, merit the black reputation it has gained from the debasers of astrology. Yeah, shout out to the Pixies. For those who will abuse and misuse the gifts available here are as deserving of being struck off the register as any corrupt doctor. But those who will give service in healing or teaching of what they receive have only good fortune to expect where Unuk al Hay shines on them. So there's an interesting thing here. Even though these two stars are from different constellations, we have one star that's sort of talking about the full price, right? The full price for our labors, the full benefit of our labors, and like, what do I deserve from my labors? Am I getting what I deserve? And then we also have this star that's like, hey, look at what you have fought to achieve. Look at what benefits the world has brought you through your work, through your labors. Are you utilizing those benefits to the best effect for yourself and for your community, right? So when we do this kind of work, whether it's with our unions, whether it's with our coworkers, or whether it's on a much more metaphysical or a spiritual level of, becoming better people and amassing payment from the universe for the labor that we've put in spiritually, emotionally, whatever it is, are we amassing that stuff just for ourselves? Are we pulling in power and benefit just to lord it over other people? Or are we taking care of ourselves and then taking care of the people around us with the boons that we have earned or received from the universe? That stuff. Um, this speaks really closely to me, because as a person who has sort of like walked several magical roads, I've walked in paganism, I've walked in hermeticism, I've walked in chaos magic. There's a lot of stuff out there that encourages us to analyze ourselves, to work on ourselves, to better ourselves. But there can be a feedback loop that starts and is fairly easily maintained in magical practice, where you become really enamored with yourself and the stuff that you can do. The first time that you have a spell work, the first time that you have a ritual work, the first time that you experience some kind of contact from something on the other side, whatever that stuff is for you, it can be very enticing. It can be very intoxicating, almost like the toxins of a snake, almost like the poison of it, um, and it can be something that you use as a drug for yourself, and you might use it to cast illusions or glamour around yourself. You might use it to gain even more benefit here in the physical plane, and never utilize it to the benefit of the people around you or your community, but instead you just use it as a means of, navel gazing basically into the end of time and delighting yourself. And I think that practice can end up being very poisonous. And I think that, in a real way, we end up the serpent biting our own tail, but in that, injecting ourselves with our own toxin and our own poisonous bullshit. But instead, when we learn that, yes, it's okay if I benefit from my work, but also my work is never just for me. My work is also for my community. It's also for my people. It's also for the people who came before me, who set me up for these successes. And it's also for the people who are going to come back or come after me, who are going to stand on my shoulders, and start their work at a place better than where I had to start my work. We can't forget that loop too. Or I think it can kind of come back to bite us, right? So that's what I see in our fixed stars this week. That's the stuff that I think is where I think we're being encouraged to focus on our stuff. Okay, so that said, now let's look at some of our holy days this week. We're not going to look at all of them, but we're going to look at some of them. We have a metric ton. Go get the calendar. It's in the Patreon bag of holding. I already gave you the shill at the beginning. Subscribe, get the link, do the thing. We have a lot of holidays this month, or in this week in particular. A lot of lamp lighting holidays. We have Intersex Remembrance Day, which is a global holiday this month, or this week, excuse me. But the holidays that I want to focus on feature a few spooky characters who are really helpful. On November 9th, sorry, that took a minute. On November 9th, from our pagan friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of the Furies. So this is a modern Wheel of the Year adaptation of a much older holiday that would not have had a fixed day. This is a fixed day that is, basically centered here near the middle of the month. So it's, tied to an extent to the lunar practice or the lunar rhythm that we're going to have at this time of year. But who were the Furies? The Furies were the Erinyes. And the Erinyes were these crones that were described as having snakes for hair. Sometimes they had black, like coal black bodies, bat wings, dogs' heads, bloodshot eyes, and they carried brass-studded scourges, and they flailed their victims. And their victims were people who were not playing by the rules, who were shitheads, who were not cool, people who cheated, people who lied, people who stealed, people who received benefit from the universe and didn't share it, right? Selfishly kept it to themselves. The Erinyes, or the Fates, or the Furies, were commonly associated with night and darkness, and they were often associated with a goddess named Nyx, who is the goddess of night and darkness. And they basically are kind of a force of revenge, or a force of vengeance in the universe and destruction. They sometimes were described as endless anger, jealous rage, and vengeful destruction. And they served a purpose in the world, that, it was thought that they were this force that would come along and not necessarily balance things, but deliver punishment to people who were not cool. They were chthonic. And what I think is interesting is a lot of their descriptive stuff absolutely connects them to Hecate, right? Dogs, and more serpents and more, absolutely connect them to Hecate, who has a holy day coming up pretty soon here. So variously, they were sometimes thought to have spilled from the blood of Uranus when he was castrated by his son Kronos, aka Saturn. Other people said they were the daughter of Nyx. Some folks say they are the daughter of Pluto and Nyx. And then some folks say that they were the daughter of Eonomy, which is a name for Earth, and Kronos, aka Saturn. Or perhaps they were the daughters of Hades, or Pluto, and Persephone, who we know has had a very potent holiday recently. So this is a time for thinking about those characters and again, these are heavy duty characters to deal with. They're heavy duty archetypes or deities to work with. So your mileage may vary, buyer beware, and all of those other catchphrases. But why might we want to summon up deities like this at this time? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because somebody's fucking with your right to choose what you can do with your body. Maybe somebody is persecuting you because of the gender that you are, or whom you choose to love, or maybe they are persecuting you because of the religion that you practice or don't practice, for that matter, right? There could be a lot of reasons. And so these are entities that people would call on to kind of balance out the evils of the world and the terribleness of the world. That. So they have a holy day this week. Cool, casual, fun, right? Exciting. Just them. Moving to our friends in Bolivia on the same day, there is a holiday there called Dia de los Natitas, and this is a Bolivian holiday that is very similar to the Day of the Dead. It takes place basically a week after Dias de la Muerte. And this is literally the Day of the Skull. This festival takes place on November 9th, a week after, as I said, the Day of the Dead. The Day of the Skull is celebrated by Bolivian Catholics. It's a huge festival. People bring skulls to the church to be blessed. And the skulls are decorated, and everybody does their best to treat it very sacredly and as a holy moment. They might put a little hat on them and use roses and hydrangeas and things like that. And so there is just sort of this moment of, honoring the skull, honoring the dead, right? Again, very, very in league with everything else that we're doing at this time of year. Okay. Moving on to November 11th, I want to focus on the holiday for the Lunatisidhe from our Irish friends and ancestors. The Lunatisidhe are a collection of fae or fairies. They are fae folk. And specifically, their name means moon fairies. They protect blackthorn trees. They are the literal guardians of them. And the blackthorn is a plant that features prominently at this time of year. It has corpse white flowers, black branches, and its sap is blood red. Very, very spooky. The blackthorn is dedicated to the goddess, the lunar goddess, and crone goddesses. And their job is to protect this tree on behalf of the goddess. They are absolutely not friendly to humans, so I wouldn't fuck with them, but they can be persuaded to allow harvesting of the leaves, the branches, the fruit, and the thorns of the tree by asking permission and leaving offerings. However, harvesting on Samhain or Beltane, for that matter, not a good job, right? So we've had Samhain, it's passed. We've had this full moon eclipse, it has passed, and now if you want to go fuck with the blackthorns, it's probably okay. But don't sue me if you get taken into the underworld. Sorry. There is a super strong tie between the lands of death, the underworld, and the fae. The word she, which is at the end of Lunatisidhe, means fairy, but it also means hollow hill and ancestors. The hollow hill referring to the burial mounds that were fairy dwellings, as well as the doors to the underworld. So this is basically a holiday dedicated to these entities that protect this bush, which is sacred to the goddess, or this tree that's sacred to the goddess, but it's also clearly an honoring of ancestors, an honoring of the dead, and an honoring of the beings that protect the passageways and the thresholds between the lands of the living and the lands of the dead. Okay, also on this same day, November 11th, from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have Mercatus number 3. We've talked about the Mercatus throughout the year, and the Mercatus were literally state sponsored and enforced shopping days. You can't make it up, people. Is it Black Friday? It just about is. Gosh, wow, what a coincidence. That's just crazy. The Roman government was literally like, hey, you guys are getting too involved in your like religious stuff and just like hanging out and enjoying time after labor. You need to get back to the marketplace and get back to shopping. We need you to spend money. Let's go. So this is literally that. Oh my God, it cracks me up so much. Um, so ridiculous. And then skipping through November 13th through 19th, we have Trans Awareness Week from our global friends and ancestors. And then on November 15th, we have from our Egyptian friends and ancestors the day of Tefnut. And Tefnut was or is an Egyptian goddess from early Egyptian myth and early Egyptian culture. Um, she often depicted as a lion-headed goddess. She often is depicted with the sun on her head, but specifically, um, Tefnut sat in judgment of the dead in the underworld. So here we have another deity to the dead, uh, being honored and aware of stuff at this time. Tefnut wears her father's sun disk, which is a symbol of power, her father being Ra. She carries a scepter. She wears an ankh, which is the symbol of life. And she was the goddess of moisture, which I love. She was also related to other deities of moisture and wetness. She is often seen holding up the sky with her husband brother Shu, and this puts her in connection to the goddess Nut, who is Nyx or Nuit, so the goddess of the dark sky or the night or night sky. She was in charge of moisture, but she also held other roles like being a goddess over order, justice, time, the weather, and heaven and hell. But above all, her main role was to bring moisture down onto the ancient Egyptians and onto Earth. Um, and she has multiple festival days throughout the year. This is her last festival day of the year, November 15th. It's the Ennead feast in the house of Ke, Heru, and Wasir. Um, and so, how I often think of her in my mind is the fog that we often see descend at this time of year. The foggy mornings and the foggy nights, and the dew that collects on stuff. I might be wrong in that, so I apologize to any ancient Egyptians that are paying attention right now. Sorry. But that's how I always think of her, as this like wet energy that's sort of coming down, like descending down, and blanketing everything in wetness. So those are the holy days that I wanted to focus on. There are a lot more in the calendar, but you'll just have to go read the calendar yourself and find out what that's all about. So, so now what I want to talk about is our tarot for this week and our magical practices for this week, and then we will wrap it up. So, tarot card for this week is the Seven of Cups. And looking at the Smith-Waite deck illustrated by Pixie Coleman Smith, the image here is of a person in silhouette. They are in shadow. It is, I'm fairly certain, the only person depicted in all black, including their face and everything, in the entire tarot deck. The only other character that's depicted in entirely black like this is it's not even really like this, but it's sort of like this. We could think of Death on the Death card in their black armor. And the only other character that's even remotely similar to this would be the character in the Five of Cups with their gigantic black cloak. But even in that one, we can see their face. This is like literally a person completely in shadow, completely in silhouette. And then they are looking at a big cloud filled with cups that have a bunch of stuff in them, coming out of them, whatever. There's a beautiful face out of one of them. There's a hidden spirit of some type coming out of one. There's a serpent. There's a building that looks very similar to the tower. There's a pile of jewels. There's a victory crown or a laurel wreath with a cup that also seems to have a skull etched into the cup. And there's a dragon or a griffin serpent type character coming out of another cup. So what do we make of this? Well, one of our clues here is that if we're looking at the combination of astrology and tarot, the Seven of Cups relates to the vibes of Venus in Scorpio. Venus is not currently in Scorpio, or oh wait, yeah, she is. Yes, they are in Scorpio right now, and Venus is about to head into Sagittarius, but is not quite there yet. So what do we have with Venus and Scorpio? Well, this is Persephone on the underworld journey, and seven vestments are taken from Persephone as she moves down. Oh, wait, no, that's Inanna and Ishtar. Same myth. There are seven gates that have to be passed through. There are seven items taken from the goddess as they move on this underworld journey. There's, seven people that they meet, 777, right? There's seven figures prominently in those myths of these life-bearing goddesses heading down into the underworld. And Venus is very much connected to life. Venus in tarot is the Empress card, right? So the abundance of Earth, the abundant energy of Mama Gaia, right? Going down into the underworld, going down into the dark, into death, into repose of some sort. And in this card, we see this person faced with this image. And so there is a sense of danger and treasures and lusty desires all being sort of presented to them in this fantasy moment. The sevens are all about fantasy. The sevens are all about expanding our understanding of what could come next in our process. And in this moment, that leads to having a feeling of excitement and having a feeling of terror, or at least wariness, right? So in the Seven of Cups, we're sort of getting a sense of oh wow, we're heading into the underworld journey. Oh no, we're heading into the underworld journey. What all might we meet here? And our imagination starts to go wild, and we start to see, how bad could this get? I mean, maybe I'll find a pile of treasures. Maybe I'll meet my lover, but maybe I'll meet ruin. Maybe I'll meet a dragon that wants to eat me. Maybe I meet a serpent that seduces me or tricks me in some way and then poisons me. Maybe I meet my own ego and then it comes crashing down around me, right? The tower. So in the Seven of Cups, we want to ground ourselves in whatever way we can. We want to take a moment, take a breath, and say, yeah, all of that spooky shit might come true, actually. It's okay. We're going to make it through. Something that I often say in the Samhain classes is make room for chaos, or chaos will make its room. And what I mean by that is that we have to invite in the unknown, because it's coming anyways. So is there a way that I can create space for the unknown in my plan? But something else that I will say in the Samhain class is, if there are devils to be met on the underworld journey, they surely will come from your own heart. And what that means is that if there is darkness in the sense of spookiness, if there is badness in front of you on the underworld journey, if there are things out there that are going to get you on the underworld journey, they're going to come from within, first and foremost. They're going to come from you not resolving things with your loved ones. They're going to come from you hiding in your own guilt or your own shame. Now, again, as I have often said in this podcast, we don't want to lose context. We still live in a world where there's a lot of external evil happening. There are corporations that are more than happy to make you houseless in the middle of winter. There are governments that are happy to run as dictatorships and literally kill you for showing your hair, right? So let's not lose sight of the fact that we also are surrounded by some pretty terrible shit in the real world. We don't need our imaginations to come after us. But that's also kind of, I think, part of what the Seven of Cups is saying is we don't need our imaginations to come after us, right? There's enough horrible shit in the world. So resolve stuff where you can, ground yourself where you can, take delight in the physical world where you can, because there's already plenty of stuff to be scared of. We don't need to imagine more. We don't need to make up stuff to be horrified by in this world. There's plenty of real things. And so the gift of the Seven of Cups is, if we can stay grounded in that, it's sort of, in a sense, the same attitude almost as the Fool, who is connected to the planet Uranus, looking down into the valley and seeing pestilence, famine, war, rape, and saying, yeah, I'll try this again. Sure, this is a delight. Imagine I am an infinite spiritual being, and I'm going to have this lifetime, which is going to last for a blip. Every piece of it I'm excited about. And, in the midst of living it, we forget that part, if that's true. We forget that we're infinite beings. We forget that we are, made of light and exist eternally. And in a moment like this, we can get very lost in the fantasy of this existence. We can get very lost in the illusion of this existence. And as we talked about before, those illusions can be very, very poisonous. So how do we remedy this? We come back to the real world. We come back to the physical self. We come back to reveling in our bodies, reveling in the presence of our loved ones and our community members and our family. We eat tasty food. We walk around the block and enjoy or we roll around the block or ambulate ourselves around the block, and we enjoy the crispness in the air, and we enjoy the smell of mildew from the leaves that are moldering. And we be here in this because we're only going to get so much of it before our turn is done at that stuff. And also, if we feel grounded enough, we can turn to our imagination as a means of an entryway into our divinatory work that we will use at this time of year, and ask, what am I scared of? What am I afraid that I'm going to meet on the underworld journey? And is there any way for me to meet it head on, meet it bravely? Because maybe this is a foe that I need to best, or at least hug up on and make love to. Or are these some spooks that are in my spirit, that are in my imagination, in my unconscious, that I can call out and bring out into the light and call myself out on this stuff? Where's my ego getting out of control? Where's my lust getting out of control? Where is my hunger for success getting out of control and depriving me from actually enjoying the life that I'm currently living? Just that stuff. It's no big deal here with witchcraft. We're not doing anything heavy. We're not doing anything hardcore. Just a little of this and a little of that. Okay. So that's our tarot for the week. Super fun. And then our magic for the week. You can continue to do no magic at all if you want to because of that eclipse. Mm-hmm. You can stay hydrated. We always love that. It's very important. But as the moon is waning, especially when we pass through that moon in Cancer, doing any kind of shadow work ritual, any kind of shadow work magic is going to be very, very, very potent. Sacrificing anything in whatever way makes sense for you Doing any kind of divination during this time period is going to be very, very potent. Doing any kind of communion with the dead, it might be a very nice time to go to your local cemetery and clean up some graves, or sweep a little bit. But it also might be a really great time to reach out to elderly folks in your neighborhood, or folks that are having a hard time dealing with bureaucracy and need some extra support, and lending your help to them, as we talked about before. But doing that as a spell, doing that as a magical act of insisting life into the face of these dead systems. Um, Again, magical workings of all kinds, though, are going to be really potent, but especially contraction magic. So, places where we are binding, places where we are clearing out obstacles, where we are uncrossing things. Um, any of our dark moon mysteries, any of our shadow work stuff. Mirror spells are particularly potent for this moon, I think. Any and all of that kind of stuff. And, as I say in every class, but in very, very much this particular Samhain moment, heading out into nature and witnessing the death of the physical plane is in and of itself a really potent magical act, and could be really intoxicating in an incredible way this week. Um, Symbols that you might work with. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to talk about that. What I am going to talk about is an incense blend that you can make for Hecate. That could be a really cool spell in and of itself, to make the blend, let it sit, and then next week when we have our day to Hecate, burning it for that, and then burning it through the rest of Samhain as well. Here is the recipe: incense for Hecate, patchouli, and I would recommend getting patchouli resin if you can find it, but patchouli essential oil is fine. Jasmine, mugwort, poppy of any kind, poppy seeds, poppy petals from any dried leaves, dried flowers that you might have harvested earlier in this year. Black lotus, that is a little difficult to find, but you can definitely find it as an essential oil. Labdanum, that word is Labdanum, labdanum. And this is a resin that has a scent that's vaguely like frankincense, but it's a lot heavier and resinier and sootier and darker. My favorite thing about labdanum is it is harvested from the beards of goats that eat the plant. The plant itself is very resinous, and the goats eat the plants, and then the shepherds harvest the labdanum resin off of the beards of the goats. It doesn't get much better than that. Okay. Also in this recipe, wormwood, that's Artemisia absinthium or absinthe, cypress, dark musk, and musk is in its real form an animal product. So buyer beware slash it's very difficult to get. There are synthetic musks. So most of the musks that are out there on the market are synthetic. So you can either use it or not. I find that, like, energetically a good replacement for musk is patchouli, which is already in this mix. You could also throw a little vetiver in as well. And then cashmere resin. And finding cashmere resin blends are very easy. It's a very popular blend. What exactly is in it? I'm not sure. I know that it has frankincense, myrrh, and benzoin, and then other spices. Nobody wants to talk about what the actual recipe is, but you could go to pretty much any occult shop, and if they've got little bags of incense resin blends, they probably have cashmere. So all of that stuff plus cashmere. Blend it together. You can blend it under the moon. I would absolutely leave it to charge under the moon as it's waning, to bring in that increasing darkness energy. You might leave it up to the new moon even, and then burn it for the rest of the Samhain season. If you can, you might keep it in a black vessel or a dark vessel or a silver vessel. Um, And when you are blending stuff with this waning moon, especially if you are specifically dedicating this to Hecate, I would stir counterclockwise or widdershins. So stirring to the left uh, will kind of have that undoing energy about it. Um, Other folks only ever stir to the right. They only ever stir clockwise, no matter what it is that they're making, because they are making something, they're creating something. So go with your instinct on that. But that's some straight up witchcraft for you there. Incense blend. And then if you want to be really cool about it, I would draw whatever your vessel is. If you don't want to mark it permanently, you can put a piece of tape on top that you can take off later. But I would put a 5-pointed star on the vessel, on the top of it, or on the side of it, or on the bottom of it, to really, really, really dedicate it to this goddess and to this energy of bringing in this darkness and bringing in this depth of energy. Okay, that, my friends, is our podcast for the week. Just a super quick recap on our lunar stuff and our astrology. Tuesday the 8th, we had our full moon eclipse at 16 degrees of Taurus. Wednesday the 9th. Oh, you know what? We never talked about the astrology of the week. Oh, no. I'm now looking at my notes and I'm realizing we never talked about the astrology. Should I mention that briefly? I get you. I can already hear you like, yeah, talk about the astrology. What the hell? Okay. Briefly. I'm only going to do the astrology for the days that are left because it's already the 10th. So Wednesday the 9th, our moon moved into Gemini. Thursday the 10th, today, we have Venus trine Neptune at 22 degrees, Venus in Scorpio, Neptune in Pisces, 22 degrees. This normally would be a really cute time for flirting and going on a first date and like having some sexy times and kind of that thing, but we still are sort of under the auspices of that full moon eclipse. So it's not super ultra great, but it can be a good time to show emotion in general or show some care, at the very least to yourself, if not others. Friday the 11th, we have our moon moving into Cancer, and we have the sun in Scorpio square Saturn in Uranus Saturn in Aquarius at 18 degrees. Sun square Saturn on its surface, not a super fun time, not a super great time. They tend to fight with each other, right? Like Saturn is all about the darkness and ending things and saying no. And the sun is like, but I'm for a force of light and good, and I want to be happy and loud and bright. Woo. Okay, so how do we work with these two planets together? Know that your energy might be super low. Know that you might be kind of focused on scarcity and like what is lacking, what we don't have. You might be around people who really need to like flex their power and like show off their power. Um, but remember who you are, remember your rights, remember your power. And specifically, this is a really great day for getting some shit done that matters. And remember what I was talking about with our moon in Cancer. This is a really great time for standing up with people who need some support, for being a shield for someone who is sort of being attacked by the bureaucracy. So, really, really potent stuff there where we have this square from Saturn that is the bureaucracy. And then we have the moon in Cancer that's like, no, we're not doing it like that. um, Doing some shit that matters on this day. Very, very potent stuff. Okay. Saturday the 12th, we have our disseminating moon in Cancer. Again, where are we feeling defensive, and is there a better place to utilize that defensiveness to maybe utilize it on behalf of someone else who needs some defending? And then also on this day, we have Mercury in Scorpio, trine Neptune in Pisces at 22 degrees. And this is a great day for doing any kind of magic, any kind of spiritual work, any kind of ritual. Um, Sending out messages to the gods, the goddesses, sending out messages to ancestors, like really, really in alignment with all of that stuff. Also, a really great day for enjoying art, enjoying music, all of that good stuff too, which is definitely something that we've talked about as a thing for this week as well. Sunday the 13th, we have um, Venus in Scorpio, sextile Pluto in Capricorn at 26 degrees. And so here's Venus and Pluto in this week where we're talking about the Seven of Cups and Venus being on their underworld journey, Persephone being on their underworld journey, and Pluto, owner of the Goth Club, as I like to say, certainly a representative of the underworld journey. So our thoughts might be a little intense. Our feelings might be a little intense on this day. Our need to express our love or our passion or our attraction to someone or something might be a little intense on this day. And if that feels good, go for it. Go with it. Like, enjoy that moment. Let your blood pump. Let your heart, race. Like, enjoy that. But this is also another really great day for connecting with art, connecting with artists and artistic expression, um, going out and enjoying nature, any of that kind of stuff. Could be super romantic, could be super sexy, could be just a day where you're like really in your senses and like really feeling the intensity of that. Then we move to Monday the 14th. Our moon moves into Libra. And on this day, we have Mercury in Scorpio, sextile Pluto in Capricorn at 26 degrees. And so yesterday it was Venus, lots of lovey, intense vibes. Today it's Mercury, so it's about our mind going to some really intense places and wanting to kind of probe and research and dive into things, investigate stuff. Um, Really great day for that kind of work. And then also on this day, we have the Sun in Scorpio, trine Neptune in Pisces at 22 degrees. This is another great day for doing magic, for doing any kind of spiritual work, connecting with ancestors, and particularly where we are wanting to express empathy or generosity, or perhaps we're asking for a little empathy and generosity from the universe. Really appropriate there. Okay. And then that brings us to the end of the week, Tuesday, the 15th. We have Venus in Scorpio, trine Jupiter in Pisces at 28 degrees. Now, this is love on top of generosity, on top of abundance, on top of good vibes, on top of the vibes are immaculate. This might be a day where you are just like in your coziest, comfiest outfit, lounging on the couch, eating bonbons all day, and just like enjoying the chill. Because when Venus and Jupiter get together, they very much feel like there's nothing to do. There's no reason to sweat. There's no reason to hustle or work at all. And if that's what's up, enjoy. Help yourself. If this manifests as an active transit for you, this is another amazing day for going and enjoying art, going and enjoying music, making art or music. Shopping on this day could be really sweet and cute, and like buying exactly the right outfit or buying exactly the right stuff that you need. Watch your spending, be smart. But this is another fantastic day for sending a petition out to the universe and saying, here is what I need. Can I please have it? Thank you. As well as receiving luck, receiving benevolence, receiving boons. And what did we talk about this week with receiving boons from our labor, right? Receiving the benefits of our labor, and what might we do with that? In what ways might we turn that around and share that with community? So this is a really cool day for all of that stuff of like witnessing, wow, here comes my basket of goodness. And the basket of goodness, again, might just be a day where you feel like, you know what? I can take today off and just like enjoy myself. I'm just going to drink my favorite tea and watch my favorite show and put on my comfy pajamas and just like enjoy this moment. That's literally like, if only, right? If only we could just have every day feel like low stress and just be chill. But it also might be a day where you get that call you've been waiting for. It might be a good day to like buy a lotto ticket if you believe in doing that stuff. Could be a really great day for asking for the thing that you need, asking for the thing that you want. Could be good. Okay, that is our rundown. And our lunar phases are running from Taurus to Leo. And that's because we are still in the very heart of fall. We are in the fixed portion of fall. We're in the very, very center of it. But soon, the sun is going to move into Sagittarius, and our lunar phases are going to move into mutable signs, and we're going to start to shift into that last 4 weeks of fall, and become shape changers again and get ready for whatever the winter journey has for us. Yes, my friends, winter is about 5 weeks away, give or take. You heard it here first, probably not, but maybe, I don't know. All right, that's it. It's nice to be back. I missed you guys. I missed doing this podcast. Obviously, I'm a little out of practice because I totally forgot the astrology. Oh, but good luck out there, kids. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. That's what's up. We are not going to get through the darkness alone. Something I talked about quite a bit in the Samhain class. If you haven't watched it, please go check it out. All right, that's it. Love you all. Blessed be.